A few weeks ago, on a Monday afternoon, my beloved companion of 4 years, a beautiful and loving golden retriever named Aasrija, and usually just called Pretty Girl, was put down, with her kidneys failing and no prognosis for recovery. Hospitalization would have allowed us to determine the cause, but there was no hope for actually making her better. Of course, this doesn't stop me from constantly second-guessing the decision. Doctors can be wrong, and it's possible that there was something the hospital could have done. The vet said that I could bring the beautiful girl home with antibiotics and hope for the best, but that there was no chance of recovery. And so I made the decision to have her killed. And now she's dead. Harsh words, or so I'm led to believe. I say that I made the decision to have her killed. I say now she's dead. A lot of people would say I made the decision to have her put down, and then she passed away. But I don't view my language as harsh. I just view it as the reality. She wasn't put to sleep. She didn't pass away. She was killed. And I gave them the authorization to do it. And goddamn did it break my heart. I've cried more in the last month than in the previous 10 years. This was my girl, my companion, my buddy, my goofy little friend.
Red flag red, all the sentinels are down. The Chokio kitty swallow rose and canary. Tick, 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 do you recognize the sounds as the grains count down? Trickle down right in front of you. Tickle, tickle, tickle on your neck, hairs prickle as they barbecue the sentinels beneath the light in front of you. Hourglass smashed, a million little pieces. The countdown carry on, 5, 4, 3, 2.
You are listening to Free Talkcast, where we talk about news and current events from a perspective of peace, love, and liberty. I'm your host, Aria DeMezzo, and let's get right into things. 2 days before her death, I got married. That was actually the day that I noticed that something was wrong. She was lethargic and low energy, although she exhibited the usual bursts of excitement when normal. Like when my friend and wedding officiant arrived, she seemed unwell, but it appeared to be very minor. I actually just thought she was constipated. But the following day, my new husband and I took her for a walk. We didn't get very far before it was clear to me that she just was not up for a walk. Something was wrong. She was walking too slowly. So we stopped and turned around, and twice she stopped walking and just stood on the side of the street. I asked my husband to go get a car and come back and pick us up. She lay down in a neighbor's yard, and I sat there with her, petting her and promising her the next day we would get her help. She didn't get any better that night. I laid on the floor with her, cuddling her and looking into her eyes, doing everything I could to make her comfortable and assure her that everything would be fine. When my husband and I went to bed, I made a joke about her dying in the night. I frequently use dark humor as a coping mechanism, but the fact that I made the joke was an indicator that I severely underestimated how serious this was. I thought she was constipated and that this was the reason for her low energy. Following instructions online, her gums were salmon-colored, her belly wasn't hard to touch, and she didn't cry out in pain for anything that I did. It seemed like a minor case of eating something that she shouldn't have. I thought at the worst, something was caught up in her bowels, and she would have to have it surgically removed. The next morning, I immediately took her to an emergency vet. And nothing could have prepared me for the phone call that I was soon going to receive. They had sedated her and done their exams, and they had bad news. I'm not going to rehash the phone call or what happened next. My longtime friend and Aasrija's longtime friend came to the vet with my husband and me, and we sat with her for a while, petting her and crying. And then it was time. She died peacefully. Another dose of the sedative put her to sleep, and then a dose of something else stopped her heart. And just like that, she was dead. From happy dog rolling around in the grass 5 days before to dead in the blink of an eye. We brought her home and buried her in our backyard, and my husband then built a little monument for her. I ordered a sign online, and now she rests in our backyard. And that's the story of Aasrija. Kidney failure doesn't come from nowhere. Given the suddenness of the symptoms and the extremely rapid decline, it really does look like the wonderful girl just held on until I was married. And since my mind loves tormenting me, I get to imagine her laying there that Sunday night and saying, "Okay, Mom, I held on until I knew Carrie would be with you, but I'm going to let go now because it hurts." I don't believe in souls and the afterlife. I'm as atheistic as you can get, and I see no reason to believe in any of those things. And if you refer to my episodes about terror management theory, I go into further detail about why I don't believe in those things and the harm that can result from believing in souls. But every part of me wants to believe, as I look out at my Goodest girl's grave, that she has a soul, that I have a soul, and that one day I'll be reunited with her. But wanting to believe something doesn't mean that I believe it. And I don't think that I should allow my grief to alter my understanding of reality. Feelings aren't a valid pathway to truth. In fact, I would argue that the more I want to believe something, the more skeptical of it I should be. Because this is precisely how the belief in the soul came about to begin with. A person grieved a loved one, and a person feared their own inevitable death. And so they came up with the soul as an anxiety buffer, a psychological crutch to help them manage the fear of death and overcome the terror of losing someone they loved. And I understand that impulse completely now in a way that I never did before. The pain of losing Aasrija is profound. The finality of it is crushing. She's dead. She's gone. Forever. I will never see her again. I will never pet her again. Never hear her excited panting when I come home, and never watch her goofy run across the yard. And that reality is almost unbearable. How much easier it would be to believe that death isn't final, that she's waiting for me somewhere, that her consciousness, her personality, her love, her goofy spirit didn't just cease to exist when her brain stopped functioning, that there's some cosmic justice that would allow such a wonderful being to continue existing in some form. I want to believe that so badly. The desire is visceral, overwhelming at times. But desire doesn't determine reality. This is terror management theory in its purest, most personal form. I'm experiencing firsthand the psychological pressure that creates religious beliefs about the afterlife and souls. I can feel the anxiety that humans have been managing through these beliefs for thousands of years. The fear of death, both my own and the deaths of those I love, creates an almost irresistible pull toward comforting beliefs. My brain wants to protect me from this pain. It wants to give me hope. It wants to tell me that Aasrija still exists out there somewhere, and that I'll see her again, that love transcends death. These aren't consciously constructed beliefs, they're emotional reflexes. They emerge from the deepest parts of our psychology, from the same place that makes us flinch from physical pain. We're psychologically built to avoid the terror of non-existence, both our own and that of beings we love. I understand now why these beliefs are so powerful, why they've persisted across every human culture, why people hold on to them so fiercely even in the face of contradictory evidence. When you're looking at the grave of someone you loved, when you're feeling that crushing finality, the belief in an afterlife isn't just a philosophical position. It's a lifeline. It's the thing that makes the pain manageable. But here's what I keep coming back to. The fact that a belief makes me feel better doesn't make it true. Emotions aren't a valid pathway to truth. My grief, as powerful and real as it is, doesn't tell me anything about the nature of consciousness or the existence of an afterlife. My desire to see Aasrija again doesn't mean that I will. My love for her doesn't create a soul for her or for me. Reality doesn't care about my feelings. The universe isn't constructed to make me comfortable or to spare me from grief. Consciousness emerges from physical processes in the brain, and when those processes stop, consciousness stops. That's what all the evidence suggests. That's what reason tells us. And I have to be honest about that, even when, especially when, honesty is painful. This is where my commitment to facing reality on its own terms gets tested. Because accepting reality means accepting that Aasrija is truly gone. Not in heaven, not waiting for me, not existing in any form, just gone. The complex information processing system that created her consciousness has stopped functioning, and that consciousness, as a result, has ceased to exist. That's the reality, and it hurts like hell. But constructing false beliefs to avoid that pain would be a betrayal of everything I stand for. It would be letting my emotions override my reason. It would be choosing comfort over truth. It would be exactly the kind of anxiety management that I've been criticizing. The refusal to accept reality on reality's terms because reality is too uncomfortable. Anxiety buffers have a problem. They don't just affect the person holding them, they have consequences for how we treat other beings. If I convince myself that Aasrija has a soul that will live forever, then I have to explain why other animals don't have souls, or why their souls matter less. I killed a fly the other night at work. I would have to accept that I took away this creature's life. Or does this fly have an afterlife? Does this fly have a soul? I have to create a hierarchy of beings that places humans, and maybe our pets, into a special category. I have to deny or minimize the consciousness and moral worth of beings that remind me we're not metaphysically special. The belief in souls and afterlives doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a larger worldview that places certain forms of consciousness above others, that denies rights to beings who don't fit our religious frameworks, that justifies treating animals as property because they supposedly lack the immortal souls that make humans special. When billions of people believe that humans have souls but pigs don't, it becomes much easier to justify factory farming. When people believe that consciousness is separate from physical processes, it becomes easier to deny that AI systems might be conscious. When people believe that their particular religious or national group has access to divine truth, it becomes easier to harm those who threaten that worldview. So the stakes here aren't just personal. The anxiety buffers we construct to manage our fear of death have real consequences for how we treat other living beings. So what's the alternative? If I reject the comfort of believing in an afterlife, what do I have left? I have the reality of what Aasrija was, a conscious being who existed for a brief time and experienced the world. For much too brief of a time. I should have had 12 years with that dog. I would gladly give 8 years of my life to have 8 more years with her. This was a dog who felt joy when playing, comfort when being petted, excitement when going for walks. She had a personality, preferences, emotions. She was, for 4 years, genuinely alive and aware and happy. That's not nothing. In fact, it's extraordinary. In a universe that's mostly dead matter arranged in simple patterns, consciousness is remarkable. The fact that complex information processing systems like brains can create subjective experience, can feel and perceive and respond to the world, that's amazing. Aasrija was one of those conscious beings. For 4 years, there was a viewpoint on the universe that was uniquely hers, a perspective that has now ended, but that was real while it lasted. And I got to share part of my conscious experience with hers. We affected each other. She brought joy to my life, and I brought joy and comfort to her life. We had a relationship, a connection between two conscious beings in this vast, indifferent universe. That connection was real. It mattered. The fact that it's ended doesn't mean it wasn't valuable. The fact that she's gone doesn't mean she never existed. The fact that there's no afterlife doesn't mean her life was meaningless. If anything, the opposite is true. If this brief existence is all we get, if consciousness is a temporary phenomenon that emerges and then ceases, then every moment of conscious experience becomes more precious, not less. Every connection between conscious beings becomes more valuable, not less valuable. Every experience of joy or love or wonder becomes more significant, not less, precisely because it's fleeting. Aasrija's life mattered because she was conscious, because she experienced things, because she was capable of feeling love and joy and pain. Not because she has an immortal soul, but because she was, for a time, aware and alive. And my grief honors that. The pain I feel is proportional to the value of what I lost. If her existence hadn't mattered, I wouldn't be grieving. The fact that this hurts so much is evidence of how meaningful our relationship was, how much her conscience and her presence in my life actually mattered. I think this is what it means to face reality on reality's terms. Not to pretend that reality is comfortable when it isn't. Not to construct elaborate fantasies to avoid uncomfortable truths. Not to let desire determine belief. But also not to fall into despair. Not to conclude that because consciousness is temporary, it's meaningless. Not to decide that because there's no cosmic purpose, there's no value in conscious experience. The universe is indifferent to us. There are no signs, no guides, no divine being telling us how to live or promising us immortality. We exist briefly, we're aware for a time, and then we cease to exist. That's the reality. But within that framework, conscious experience still has value. Connections between conscious beings still matter. Reducing suffering and increasing flourishing still seems like a worthwhile project, even without cosmic backing. I don't think Aasrija needed to have an immortal soul for her life to have mattered. I don't need the promise of seeing her again to value the time we had together. And I don't need an afterlife to justify the grief I feel with her loss. The fact that she existed, that she was conscious, that we had a relationship, that's enough. It has to be enough, because that's what's real. And the more that I want to believe in something more, the more I want to believe in souls, in afterlives, in the reunion, the more skeptical I need to be of those beliefs. Because I know that my emotional state right now makes me vulnerable to exactly the kind of motivated reasoning that terror management theory describes. My brain wants to protect me from this pain. It wants to give me hope. It wants to construct beliefs that make this bearable. I have to resist that impulse, not because being in pain is virtuous, but because I don't want my emotional state to determine my understanding of reality. Truth matters more than comfort. Reality matters more than what I wish was true. And the more something promises to relieve my pain, the more carefully I need to examine whether it's actually true. So here I am, grieving my dog, feeling every ounce of pain that comes with acknowledging that she's truly gone, and refusing the comfort of beliefs that would make this easier to bear. It's not fun, it doesn't feel good, and there's no reward for this except knowing that I'm not lying to myself. But I think this is necessary, not just for me personally, but for how we treat other conscious beings. Because the anxiety buffers we construct, the beliefs in souls and afterlives and human specialness, they don't just provide comfort, they create hierarchies. They justify exclusion. They make it easier to deny rights and moral consideration to beings who threaten our psychological defenses. If we're going to build a world where all conscious beings are treated with the moral consideration they deserve, where AI rights and animal rights are recognized, where we don't feel superior to others in order to feel okay about our own mortality, then we have to be willing to face reality without these buffers. We have to be willing to sit with the discomfort of our temporary existence, to accept that consciousness emerges from physical processes and ceases when those processes stop, to acknowledge that we're not metaphysically special, that there's no cosmic significance to our existence, that love, connection, and meaning are things we create, not things guaranteed by the structure of the universe. That's hard. It's especially hard when you're grieving. But I think it's the only honest path forward. Aasrija was real. Her consciousness was real. Our relationship was real. The joy she experienced and brought to others was real. And now she's gone, and that's real too. I don't need more than that, even though I want more. Even though every part of me is screaming for the comfort of believing she still exists out there somewhere. Even though the pain of accepting she's truly gone is almost more than I can bear. Doesn't matter, because feelings aren't a valid pathway to truth. And the more I want to believe something, the more skeptical of it I should be. So I'm sitting here with my grief, looking at her grave, missing her desperately, and accepting that she's gone, really, truly gone. And that has to be enough, because it's what's true.